Hey folks, I'm back. This is UTB Brad from UTB Blogs, and I'm still seeing a lot of fear out there. I'm seeing fear from BlackBerry users that want the new BlackBerry phone, but they're afraid. They're afraid to go from BlackBerry 10 to BlackBerry Android, and I think we can put one of those fears to rest. Okay, before we get started, I want to put a little bit of a disclaimer out there. I know that there are BlackBerry 10 loyalists out there that have no intention of moving off of BlackBerry 10 onto BlackBerry Android. That's okay. BlackBerry 10 is still an amazing operating system. And if it works for you, there's no reason to move off of it. There's still phones available. It's still being supported. It's still a great operating system. But there's some users that are looking at that new phone. They're looking at the new Key 1 and they want it, but they're afraid. They're afraid of what they're going to give up by moving from BlackBerry 10 to BlackBerry Android. And let's be honest, you're going to give some things up when you make that transition. You're going to give up the fluidity of that operating system, and you're going to give up those gestures that we all love. But you also gain a lot. You gain access to those apps. You gain access to those games. You gain consumer-facing operating system updates that bring those bells and whistles that we all love. So there's a gain, there's a loss. You have to decide for yourself what you want. But there's also a fear that people are going to lose their privacy. They're going to lose their security. They're going to get swallowed up by the Googles. And that's a bit of a problem. It's a problem because I don't think it's a realistic fear. Google is not going through our cell phones and stealing our information, regardless of what people think. They're not doing that because they don't need to do it. They don't need to do it because they've already got all that information. Now, I'm not happy about that. I'm not comfortable about that. But it's true. Google has that information not by going through our phones, but by offering a lot of services. They offer a lot of great services. And they offer these services free. And we all know that there's a trade-off by using these free services. But I'm sure most of us actually use those services. I'm sure most of us have a Gmail. I'm sure a lot of us use Google Chrome. Obviously, if you're watching this, you're using YouTube. Now, everything that we use of Google, it goes through their servers. They know what we're doing. They know what we're watching on YouTube. And they don't need to go through our phone and steal that information to know it because they see it on their side. So let's take that out of the equation. And let's look at something else that should bother most of us, which is other developers. Facebook and Joe Blow down the street that has developed this great app that everybody has to have. Now, these apps require permission to use parts of our phone. If it's a camera app, it's going to need permission to use our camera. It's going to need permission to the files. If it's a call recorder app, it's going to need permission to our contacts or our phone itself. It needs all those permissions. Now, BlackBerry 10 did something great, and they did something first, which was granular app permissions. We could go in and decide what these apps we're going to use on our phone. If we got an app that asked for all the permissions, we could say, you know what, I'm going to let you use my contacts, but I'm not going to let you use my camera. And that was amazing, and it was better than everybody else out there. But Android caught up. When Google brought out Marshmallow, it brought with it those granular app permissions. And suddenly, Android users could do the same thing BlackBerry 10 users have been doing for the previous couple years, which was turn those permissions on and off. But I gotta say, I think Android has topped BlackBerry 10. And not just any Android, but BlackBerry Android. Now, I know that sounds like sacrilege, but there's a reason for it. And that reason is the DTech app. I think that most of us that have moved from BlackBerry 10 to BlackBerry Android, or even just have both of the phones, have been shocked and amazed by what we've seen on the DTech app. Because we could turn those permissions on and off on BlackBerry 10, but we didn't know how often they were being used. So If we had a Facebook app on our phone, of course it needed to use contacts. How else is it going to find our friends, right? And we would give it permission to the contacts. Did we know how often it was seeing those contacts? Did we know how often it was jumping in and grabbing information from them? We had no idea. Now with the DTEC app on BlackBerry Android, we know exactly what it's doing. So when we download an app, we can turn permissions on. We can let the apps run the way that they're supposed to and grab the information that they need. But we can also go in and see when that Facebook app has grabbed our personal information 2,000 times over the last week. That's a problem. That's a problem that I think most of us would be uncomfortable with. It's also a problem that we would have never saw on BlackBerry 10. So at the end of the day, when we're talking about privacy, I gotta say, BlackBerry has done an amazing job on BlackBerry Android. And I really think BlackBerry has topped BlackBerry 10 on BlackBerry Android as far as my privacy is concerned, because now I can make sure that these developers and these apps are using the permissions which I give them responsibly. And I just couldn't do that before.